Nutrition Step 3. We'll look at using lists and thinking the Paleo model, understanding personalized nutrition and monitoring our progress, and incorporating integrative medicine knowledge into our dietary decision making, understanding the balance we need and how to use supplements to get it if needed. I'm Mark Lorenzato, MD, for PaleoLegacy.com. Using lists. Lists can be a great tool until you master an understanding of something. Glycemic index, a good example. Foods that cause your blood sugar to go up. Glycemic index. Foods that you eat a lot of that cause your blood sugar to go up. Glycemic load. Glycemic index has its limitations. If you eat a food that is a lower glycemic index that has beta-glucans in it, it may not cause your blood sugar to rise, or you may be taking something to mitigate that. Yet, the food may still cause de novo fatty acid production, contributing to packaging fats low in fat-soluble antioxidants, and may be fueling atherosclerotic disease and cancer. Glycemic index is not an end-all, but it's a good list to know from. Glucose content from carbohydrates less the fiber. By this I mean look at Wikipedia when you're curious. Look at the total carbohydrates, subtract the fiber. That's usually starch and sugar together. There may be other polymers in there, inulin for instance, other things. But in general, total carbs minus fiber is starch and sugar, which we know turns into sugar and sugar. Recipes or lists, they can be great if they're well thought out and balanced. If they have a Paleo Legacy model behind them and an integrative medicine model merged, they can be powerfully well designed. This is true of menus too. Sources of nutrients is a critical issue. Where is your food coming from up the food chain? What is the quality of it? A list thing. Who do you want to buy from? What companies are good? Sources of anti-nutrients. By this I mean looking at things that can be damaging. Inorganic phosphates, for instance. Vitamins you don't want to be taking, for instance. Phytic acid, which is in pulses, in legumes, can be a problem if it's raw and not cooked. It can bind with zinc, iron, copper, combined with calcium. It can make a person anemic. There are additives to avoid. Look on the list. After a while, you won't have to. Sources of dietary angiogenesis inhibitors. Angiogenesis, blood vessel growing. Inhibitors, things that keep blood vessels from growing. Well, cancers have a step that they need new blood vessels. Dietary angiogenesis inhibitors may be beneficial, and preventive medicine can weigh a long distance, go a long way in the balance of health. Modifying list for your personal nutritional needs. You may need to have a gluten restrictive or a soy restrictive or a casein, the protein and milk restricted diet. Do it by list. Paleo topics are valuable because they're an abstraction that have great power. We need to validate them by specific knowledge, but in general, avoiding processed foods can be a powerful word. Cereals are high in phosphates, low in calcium in general. They're generally high in starch. If they're processed, we have more likely of a bad outcome. Looking at what happens with sodium, phosphates, nitrates as they're added. Understanding if things are refined oils or packaged foods. The abstractions help. Leavening. Yeast is much better than using sodium bicarbonate. Stay away from the sodium. Food production to maintain nutrients. Critical thing is the animal husbandry and the progression from the field to the market, from the market to us. Food preparation when we get home, frying can be anti-nutrient based, or a light steam could be much better. There's room for all in moderation. Range-fed meat is a good model of game meat. It's not exact because we've changed what animals are made of. They have higher fat content. Fish, we can know which fish are high from a list in DHA and which are low. Which vegetables, nuts, and seeds are the better ones, which ones cause problems, and which dairy products we might want to do in moderation, which ones to avoid. Greater than fire in humankind has been malting and fermentation to modify food. You put food in water and let it for several days, the water can break the bonds between molecules, making it much more accessible to our digestion. We can think in these abstract terms to our benefit. Personalized medicine and personalized nutrition is mostly about knowing our DNA, or our SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism pattern. Some of us know some of our SNPs. Eventually we'll all know all of our SNPs or have access to that database. The greatest benefits are not going to be for an individual through understanding their SNPs. It's going to be general changes of avoiding starch, sodium, and changing our dietary pattern to a pre-agrarian pattern in terms of the nutrients. Beyond that, the SNPs may be of great value, with some exceptions where they are primarily very critical. Knowing disease risk from either your family tree genetically or your family or your culture base can be very powerful, and avoiding foods that contribute to disease may be paramount. Considering longevity, how DNA is repaired on a daily basis, and how to avoid toxins are more important now than they have been in the past, when understanding avoiding of infectious disease was a primary concern. And integrating diet with physical conditioning is critical, because physical conditioning both strengthens our body and keeps us in balance and keeps us eating well. A focus on vitamins and DNA for well-being can illustrate that some vitamins are good. Vitamin K2, menaquinone, nicotinamide, also called niacinamide, and folate tend to be beneficial, where excessive amounts of biotin, riboflavin, and vitamin A can all be damaging. Taking a multiple vitamin as well as having a full complement of vitamins in your diet doesn't make sense. There is an implication that looking at game meat content in its most natural setting, the fatty acids, the amino acid derived molecules, the vitamins, the minerals, and all, will give us more insight into our paleo legacy. To monitor progress, we can do it in an inexpensive way by just making a list of what we're eating and seeing how well that manages what we should be eating. We can look at our exercise tolerance, our immunity balance. Are we becoming ill? If you have a tendency to any disease, or even if you don't, you may want to do a glucose monitor, because it's inexpensive and very feasible. Understand your blood sugar. I always recommend a VAP cholesterol lipid panel on a yearly physical for individuals, because it is such a powerful tool for understanding your nutritional status. And it seems we're coming to the era where an ENOX-2 cancer screen may be possible. Targeting assessment of disease states through laboratory and imaging and DEX scan for bone density are all very reasonable things to do for preventive medicine that integrate very much with your diet. The process of incorporating integrative medicine knowledge in your system can be done by starting one food at a time. If you took a mushroom, I do recommend you cook your mushrooms, as this is the most common recommendation of the people that are knowledgeable about mushrooms. Avoiding disease is by far a preferred strategy, so using dietary angiogenesis inhibitors and having molecules that help in repair of DNA may all be of good benefit, as well as making sure we get enough DHA that can assist in apoptosis or programmed cell death as needed. Most individuals do not get enough vitamin D. There are some dietary sources, it's mostly from the sun. Vegetarians are frequently deficient of certain essential fatty acids, DHA and EPA, the amino acid derived molecules from meat, because they lack meat in their diet, so L-carnitine or acetyl-carnitine, carnosine, menaquinone, and such. In supplementation, it is reasonable to take with meals, as most supplements do well with meals. In conclusion, we've been introduced to micronutrients, vitamins, essential fatty acids, amino acid derived molecules, some minerals, both fat soluble and water soluble vitamins, macromolecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, an introduction to the paleo legacy model of decreasing your starch and sugar, your sodium, your inorganic phosphate, and eating more in a model before agriculture. Personalized nutrition, acknowledging that our cultural nutritional liabilities are a great influence in how well we manage our diet. We've looked at the integrative medicine model concept of using dietary angiogenesis inhibitors molecules that stop new blood vessel growth in young cancers as a way of preventive medicine. Makes good sense. And we've considered looking at supplements that may keep us in balance with our pre-agricultural era biochemistry and physiology balance from our paleo legacy of hundreds of thousands and hundreds of millions of years. Thank you for listening. This is Mark Lorenzato for PaleoLegacy.com.